Alright, I'm Nick Limber, and this is my final presentation. So, our goal was to develop a chat application, and in my specific case, I chose a chat application for IT-related questions or chats. However, this goal was not achieved without prior learning and experimenting and tinkering. Key parts in the learning process were developing the server-client model for our application, as well as understanding TCP ports and IP addresses. And in the rest of this presentation, we'll dive into the experimentation that took place in order to achieve the understanding for us to deploy and develop our application. The first thing we'll discuss is the server and the client. A relatively simple depiction is the picture on the right, where the client sends a request to the server and the server sends a response. Now, in the context of our application, the client would be someone trying to access our application, and our application is running on the server. So somebody who wants to access it sends a chat, which is a request to the server. The server then acknowledges that request and the connection that the client made to it. It breaks down the request, it processes it, and then it'll send a response, which would be our chatbot sending a human-like response to the client. And then we'll get into TCP ports and IP addresses. TCP is Transmission Control Protocol, and it's a protocol that allows us to transmit data through the use of ports. Now, to understand TCP, we need to understand what a port is. And a port is just an endpoint for that data transmission or that protocol. What it allows it to do is if we go back here, it sends when someone sends a request, a client sends a request to our server, we have our application running on the server, and it is running on a certain port. So when the request is sent, it has to know which port to send it to so that our application can then proceed to process the request that the client has sent to us. And then the IP address is actually the identifier for device communication. So it's similar to a port, where a port shows the service or application or process running on the computer. An IP address shows a computer. It identifies a computer in a network or over the internet. Here's the specific example for my test case in my application. First, in the code, we can see that we create a client with the client class, and then with that client, we use the start connection method to start a connection to our local machine on port 9090. Now, port 9090 does not need to be the port that you use, but it does need to be the same port that your server is running on. After we establish the connection, we then retrieve the response from the server, and we check if that response equals what we thought it would be. Now, this is an important topic for many different reasons. For one, we learn how to establish server and client communication. Why is this so big? Because this is used in almost every application you will come across, and you most likely use this on a daily basis. One thing that was rough in the learning experience is implementing it in Java for us, or anybody else who did this and is trying to implement it in a different way, because we can gain the fundamental knowledge on how it works, but actually implementing it and getting it to work for you and in your certain use case is hard.